Welcome to The Inner Practice, a podcast about healing, resilience, and the ways yoga and mindfulness shape how we meet life's challenges. I'm your host, Jackie Vandertuin. Today's guest understands healing from both sides. She was once a varsity athlete, someone who knew discipline, training, and the intelligence of the body in motion. That path eventually led her into community health promotion, yoga therapy, and integrative healthcare education. But in 2022, her life shifted when she was diagnosed with cancer of the tongue. That experience deepened the work she was already doing at the intersection of nervous system regulation, emotional intelligence, and integrative health. Today, she currently serves as chair of the Department of Yoga Therapy and Ayurveda at Notre Dame of Maryland University, where she trains future yoga therapists and healthcare professionals to bring more humanity and regulation into healthcare systems. She is also the CEO and director of Optimal State of Living and host of the Yoga Therapy Hour podcast. Today, we talk about resilience, health, yoga, and what it means to live the practices we teach. Please welcome Dr. Amy Wheeler. Amy, I am again so excited to have you as a guest. As you and I were chatting, I have been listening to your podcast for a couple of years now, so it's honestly a little daunting for me to interview you with somebody with so much knowledge and expertise and such a vast array of things and tools to tap into. So I am excited to learn from you and also learn about your story. But let's go back a little bit because you were a varsity athlete. And I say were as in past tense because I know you said you're going to the gym now as well. So, define an athlete. But you were a varsity athlete at the University of Northern Iowa. More specifically, a heptathlete, which I find fascinating because you had expertise in so many areas. But what did that sport teach you about discipline, resilience, and listening to your body?
Well, first of all, I just want to say thank you for having me. I feel like I've met a like-minded and like-hearted person. And I wanted to ask you last time, we won't go into it, but you have so many medals behind your right shoulder that I'm thinking you may be an athlete also. So we'll get to that another time. But going all the way back, what was that, 30 years ago, because I'm in my mid-50s now, I think what being a heptathlete taught me, starting, in fourth grade with the long jump and the high jump and all of it, all the way up through, college athletics, it really gave me this direct realization about the relationship between effort and feedback, and if you have a one-pointed focus in one direction, what you're capable of, what happens when you get your attention and focus scattered in many different directions. And then another really important theme I think we'll talk about today is this idea of effort. For much of my career, both in sport and in my profession, I always thought more is better. Higher effort, more intensity is better. And I've really come to understand that is not the case. So those are kind of the two things that I would say really I was learning in college, but I continue to learn more about.
I have to echo that simply because I have the mindset, you and I are both academics, and there's, I think, a falsehood that the more effort you put in, the more success that you'll get. And I've learned so much from even just sitting back and not necessarily the physical or the cognitive effort, but sometimes just sitting back and processing. So I really appreciate that. But what I also find really fascinating is the direction that you've taken in kind of your pathway, because you're also a sports psychologist and you've worked closely with professional athletes, the LA Lakers, just to name drop. What drew you to that field, particularly with those high performance environments?
Well, I'll just say I worked a long time ago with the Lakers doing a lot of yoga and breathing. And since then, I've worked with many professional and amateur athletes over the last 30 years, a lot of golfers I work with even today. And I think what I teach athletes to do for themselves, because I consider it a self-empowered practice, is to have awareness of their state, which most people don't have an inner awareness of their own state, right? Their senses, their mind, it's all going out instead of, okay, where am I? How do I feel right now? And then how to reorganize that inner state, your breath, your mind, the shakiness of your hands or not. So the awareness of your state, being able to label it or articulate what that inner state is like, those sensations, what do they mean? And then taking that into, well, what do I need to do about that if it's off kilter? What intervention might work to shift my inner state so that I can get back on track? That's really what I do. And that's how my sports psychology and yoga came together, because yoga is all about a rearrangement of the inner experience.
Yeah, that is absolutely fascinating. And it's something that, I try and play with a lot. Particularly, that's where my focus has been, is what's going on inside my body and what's going on with the emotions as well. And linking those two. I was doing a meditative practice the other day, and that's exactly what I was doing. And I was visualizing, my dog, because my dog gives me comfort. And then I was visualizing somebody who was angry at me, but I paid attention to my internal state. Blew my mind when I actually focused on, that comparison of my dog, Sasha. When I compared, the happiness that I felt with Sasha versus seeing that person come towards me. And then I went back to Sasha again, my dog. But it was phenomenal where my stomach was kind of getting upset, where I was getting a headache. So I love that practice that you are doing with individuals, just to bring them to that state. So I could talk to you forever about so many things.
I know. Each one of these questions could be a podcast. I have so much. I just did what you said with someone this morning. Put them in a place of safety through their own visualization, had them tune into what was happening physiologically and the sensations. Then we went to a really uncomfortable place that wasn't so pleasant, watched the internal sensations, and then pull it back to something that's more pleasant again and more stable, and watch the sensations. And the physiology literally changed, the heart rate, the body temperature, all of it. So we have so much power in our minds to choose where to put our focus.
I'm getting goosebumps. I'm literally getting goosebumps. I'm totally geeking out here. But you've lived in a world that connects so many different things. Athletes, sports psychologists who've worked with elite performers, yoga therapist, educator. When you look across those worlds, what has each taught you about the mind, about resilience, and what it truly means to be well?
I mean, for me, all of these, whether it's yoga therapy, sports psychology, integrative health, it's about humanism, which is the experience of being human. And in all of these situations, we suffer. And I don't come right out and say this to my athletes, because they didn't come for any kind of spiritual counsel, but they're suffering. The golfers are suffering. They have low self-esteem. They're worried what everyone thinks about them. They don't know how to communicate to their coach. Their girlfriend or boyfriend upset them right before they went to a big tournament. They are suffering, and they don't know what to do with that suffering. So, for me, what resilience means is that we are aware that we're suffering. We can name it, and then we know what to do about it to bring ourselves back to non-suffering. So in all of these situations, that's what's happening. And I don't necessarily tell the athletes that, most young golfers aren't wanting that. They're wanting, how do I get a lower score? And the beautiful thing about this work is whether you have to give a speech on stage, or you have to get a low golf score, or you have to relate to your loved one, it's all the same tools and technologies to help bring us back into balance.
Yeah, I love that you say that, and certainly going back to the Buddha where, we're all suffering. And I don't know if that brings comfort to me to note that, you're suffering, I'm suffering, my kids are suffering. There's a commonality amongst all of us who share suffering. And that's one of the things that I often think about with, social media and Instagram when you see perfect pictures.
Yeah.
And then when you look deeper, they're all suffering, right? And again, it's that commonality, and it's looking at people knowing that I have a soul, and also looking at those people and seeing that they have a soul as well. So that relationship building with people, I think is a huge component. But before we talk about your cancer diagnosis, can you share a little bit about the path that led you from sports psychology to yoga and then into integrative healthcare education?
Yeah. So back in 1996, I had just gotten my PhD in educational psychology. And all the people I was studying with at the University of Illinois at Chicago were into sports psychology. Gloria Balagay is one of them, John Nichols. So they were, Joan Duda, they were all into sports psychology. And so Gloria took me under her wing and began to take me to different world events for sports, because she was officially like USA sports psychologist woman. So I had this mentor that just brought me in, and then when she couldn't travel, she'd send me instead of her. So I really got to work with high level athletes since 1996. So I was just finishing my PhD and very burnt out. Anyone who's done a PhD knows that it's a very, very hard process. I think something like 1 in 8 or 1 in 9 people actually make it through. And I just didn't even know if I wanted to do it anymore. It kind of sucked the joy out of me. So I decided on a whim that like a month later, I was going to go to India and kind of find myself, find my soul. There must be something more because I was suffering. And when I got there, I discovered yoga and yoga therapy, and I discovered 2,000-year-old teachings on how not to suffer or suffer less or maybe accept your suffering. And there was a very specific pathway that involved postures and breathing and meditation and maybe hand gestures and mudras and visualization. And I was like, wow, if athletes knew that 2,000 years of this had been mapped out so clearly, some of them might be willing to do this. And so right there, my sports psychology and my yoga therapy came together. And I want to say the way that I teach yoga has very little to do with triangle pose or plow pose or headstand. I would say that's maybe 10% of it, but there's all these other tools in the yoga tool basket that are about the mind. So that's when I started kind of combining. And I again, I don't advertise it, but the type of sports psychologist I am is that you will be doing yogic training of the mind with me. And then that kind of went over into like, okay, well, if this works with athletes, it must work with normal people too. People who are suffering from insomnia and high blood pressure and skin rashes and low back pain and neck pain and fibromyalgia. And sure enough, all that same toolbox works very well to regulate people's nervous system. And when you can help people regulate their nervous system, you help to regulate their digestive system, their endocrine system, their immune system, their cardiovascular system. The nervous system is like a dial that you can dial things down, you can dial things up. And so when I figured out that all these techniques were like a dial for the nervous system that can have an effect on all these other systems, it went from, oh, we can do so much for blood pressure and all the stress-related diseases, heart disease, diabetes. I'm not saying we can cure it with yoga. I don't want people to think like, oh, we can stretch and then heart disease goes away. But you can regulate your mind to not be so stress reactive. You can regulate your mind to have better resilience. And then you don't end up eating the sugar and the cookies out of emotional eating, right? There's a big chain of behavior change. So that kind of brings us into integrative health, right? That I think yoga therapy can be a complementary modality to health education coaches, to wellness coaches, to just about anybody, really, that we have these mental, emotional, and maybe even spiritual tools to help people regulate themselves And that is, the root of a lot of our dis-ease and disease.
Yeah. I often say on this podcast and to others, my studio is actually like a hospital, my yoga studio. And people don't necessarily know they're coming in with a brokenness or suffering, but they figure out there's something different about this practice. And some people come in, with my classes, they start their watches and they count their calories. But then there's an addition that they're like, I don't know what I'm getting out of this. So I always think of yoga as that prescription that we could just write for people and say, hey, you know what? Have you tried this modality? And I love the fact that you said it's not going to cure cancer. It's not going to cure heart disease. It's not going to do any of those things. But maybe it's something that's free that you can try and to help with those other things. So I love what you're saying.
I would say, though, let's just take cancer, for instance. There's a way to have cancer and suffer less mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. To not focus on the fear, to not focus on the potential of death, to not focus and worry that your children will be motherless. There are ways to redirect your mind to feel better, even with a very critical diagnosis.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. Can we talk about your cancer diagnosis? Because, in 2022, you were diagnosed with cancer of the tongue. Can you take us back to that moment when that diagnosis came about?
Okay. So I had been feeling really tired for a long time, like 6 months. And this was just coming out of COVID. And we had been online for the university for quite a long time. And in January, they said, you need to go back to the classroom. And I was like, I am so tired. And I didn't know if I had long COVID or what was going on, but I'm so tired. I don't know if I can meet the 17-year-olds where they need to be met. So I tried it. I went back, and I'd already had 25 years in as a professor. So I tried it, and probably halfway through the semester, I was like, this is too much. I don't think I can do this. Something might be wrong with me. So I had hit my 25-year mark, and I told my department chair, I'm going to retire after this semester. I have 25 years and I'm exhausted. Something doesn't feel right. So they agreed, and I was going to retire. I think it was on, what the date was. I taught my last class at noon. And I was like, wow, I am free. As much as I love teaching, I'm free. I'm free. I have a little bit of a pension. I still was going to have to work at some other job, but I was free. So that was at noon. At 2:00, I got a telephone call for something that I had gone into the ENT. I was just like, yeah, this thing in my mouth kind of hurts, Oh, maybe your tongue was rubbing on your tooth, So at 2:00, 2 hours after I retired, I got the call that I had tongue cancer. They had taken a biopsy and told me there's no way that, but it was a real shock. And so then within 9 days, because the tissues of the mouth reproduce very, very quickly, so you have to jump on this. So within 9 days, I had about 20% of my tongue removed just to make sure we got all the margins. And then what a lot of people don't know about cancer is that you don't know what stage it is because you have to wait to see if it has traveled anyplace else. Right. You have to wait to see if it shows up in your lymph or your, all the different areas it might have traveled to. So even now it's been, 3+ years. I'm still in that 5-year window where we don't know if it traveled anywhere else. Right. So I don't think it has. I feel very good. I feel like I didn't have to do chemo and radiation. I think they just basically chopped off that part of my tongue. And another thing that people don't know that they might find interesting is your tongue is a little bit like a salamander's tail, and it does grow back. So my tongue, if you were to look at it, doesn't look that deformed. And I had, over these few years, I have had to really be conscious about where to place my tongue to get the same sounds to come out, and it can get very tired. But pretty much it's grown back, and it's a little bit of hardened scar tissue on that side. And like I said, I have to focus to speak well, which is just fine with me. So yeah, it was an interesting journey.
That must have been when you get that note, when you get that conversation. Can you talk a little bit about how that made you feel? I mean, I can make the assumption, but to hear the C word, um, it conjures up all kinds of pictures in my mind. But how did you feel with that diagnosis?
I was in shock because I consider myself very healthy. I'm the girl that has worked out every day of my life. There is zero cancer in my family. The only thing I can point to that I was doing at that time that I had never done before in my life is I was having a little bit of wine each night. The whole COVID, I think I'll have a little
Mm-hmm.
wine tonight.
Mm-hmm.
And that had been going on maybe 9 months, and I haven't done it since because I do think alcohol does lead to cancer. We know that now. But other than that, I was just in shock because I couldn't believe someone as healthy as me with no family history could get that. Um, and then I had to kind of figure out like I have 9 days to get everything in my life in order so I can take at least 4 to 6 months off of all the things that in addition to the university, I had a whole lot of other things going on. And I had to get substitute teachers for all my yoga classes. Because I wasn't going to be able to talk.
Right.
You just basically have to be quiet. It was a forced situation of silent meditation. So, yeah, so I think after the initial shock, it was like, oh my gosh, I have to get things in order. And then that just, you're running,
Yeah.
to get it in order. The day of my surgery, I was very upbeat. I felt good. Let's get this out of me. I was listening to a mantra all morning, and I had a 4-hour wait because someone else, once they got me in my robe and everything, somebody else needed to jump into surgery. So I had to sit there for 4 hours. But it really wasn't a problem. I just put my headphones on and listened to Om.
Mm-hmm.
Like a thing from a friend had sent me. And for 4 hours, I just listened to Om.
I mean, my question is what would you have done had you not had yoga? And I know that's a really hard question, but to go in with a cancer diagnosis, you've made all these decisions really quickly. You've just retired, like so much is going on, and it sounds like you were relatively calm.
I was. I was I was okay. Yeah, I mean, it sounds weird. If I had not had yoga, I would have not understood the cascade of physiological effects that happen when we allow ourselves to go to fear. It would have been a completely different story. I would have been a wreck. I would have been worried. I would have been stressed out. I would have ruminated on all of that. But instead, because of yoga teachings and knowing how important it is to stay in what we call a sattvic state, a regulated, positive sense of well-being, it's going to be okay. I got this. I'm loved. I'm connected to my source. I knew, and probably I had brainwashed myself for 25 years at that point through yoga to go to source, go to well-being, go to resilience. And by that time, my mind could just do it. Not that I didn't have little fears come in, but when you brainwash yourself or whatever you want to call it for 25 years, it's much easier to go there in times of trouble.
Yeah. And that's why they call it a yoga practice, right? Practice when things are going well, so you can tap into it when things aren't going so well. I am so glad that you had that modality to help you through a really difficult point in your life.
Can I tell you one more funny part of the story?
Absolutely.
During this whole time, like before I got my diagnosis, I had a team from a university in the East Coast say, could you help us write protocols for people who have cancer? We're doing these research studies, and you're an academic, you're in yoga. Help us write these study protocols. And I was like, oh, I don't know anything about cancer. My family hasn't had cancer. Like, I'm probably not your girl, but they talked me into it and I did it. And to this day, I'm doing cancer research. It was almost like the universe knew I was going to have this before I did.
Oh my goodness. Do you think that actually helped you that you came in kind of knowing a little bit, maybe more about cancer than you had previously, or no
Yeah, I
difference?
think so. I think so. I learned a lot about cancer to be able to write the protocol, and then I had a lived experience of it, which deepened my ability to make a better protocol.
Yeah, yeah. I was actually talking to a student last night and she was asking me kind of, you know, life questions. What do I do? Do I go for more education? I'm like, you know what, just practice because then you have that experience to be able to relate to whomever your people are. What I am curious about is when the healer becomes the person who's being healed. How did you make that kind of transition, almost relying on people to help you through? Did you question them? Did you go with, okay, I'm going to go completely with what they say? Or, how did you manage that transition, I guess I'll call it, from being the healer?
I just said this to someone today. I think it's like multiple intelligences. Some of us are smart with words, others with pictures, others with art, others with music. I feel like being a healer or helping other people heal is multiple healing intelligences. And just because I know yoga doesn't mean I know what my ENT or my surgeon knows. Or so in the areas where I know nothing, I'm a baby. Tell me what to do, I'll do it. But then there's areas that I know from a lived experience. And I don't think anyone tried to step on those toes at all. Like for them, integrative health and using things like meditation and affirmation and visualization, that's not their area. So nobody was talking to me about any of that. And I think what that points to is the gap in our medical care. There is a huge gap there that you and I and our students and everybody we know could be filling to help people have a more positive experience during whatever chronic illness, diagnosis they have. So to answer your question, it wasn't hard for me to flip back and forth between being the patient and knowing what I could do for myself because I don't know anything about cutting people's tongues off. I didn't even know your tongue could grow back.
I had no idea, so thank you for that. Um, did your ENT or your oncologist, did you tell them that you were, meditating and using mantras, and did they look at you oddly, or did they just say, okay, you do you? Like, how did they react? Or if indeed you did tell them that that's what you were doing?
I always look through the list of providers and choose Indian doctors because if there's an opportunity to have those conversations, I'm wondering if they culturally have grandparents or parents or anyone that used these type of things. So I do my best to only choose Indian doctors, and I won't say that 100% of them know about it, believe in it, but a very large percentage do, and I'm always bringing it up to them. During this time, I had the same primary care physician for over 20 years, and she was an Indian woman, Ravneet Singh, and every single time every single appointment that we had, we would discuss it.
Yeah, because you're speaking a common language.
Yeah.
You're saying things that someone's like, okay, whatever, I'll park that over there and let's go back to the real medicine. I mean, I'm air quoting the real medicine. Um, I really appreciate that, the fact that you were able to tap into that to help heal you. And you and I am sure we'll talk a lot about integrative medicine because that is absolutely where my heart lies as well. So, your work focuses on nervous system regulation and emotional intelligence. Um, did you experience your own nervous system responding? And what ways did you help yourself based on your training? And I guess you answered that, but what tools did you find most helpful? And we often think about things as what is the take home, the best thing that I could do. Is there something that you said, yes, that was my go-to for really helping me through this time?
Well, this is not going to be a very satisfying answer, but I think 80% of the work is awareness of what state you're in. We all lack so much awareness. So learning to check in and be with like, oh, what's happening inside of me right now? Oh, I'm feeling very sympathetically charged up right now. Is that good? Am I running a race or am I trying to go to sleep? I don't really want to be sympathetically charged when I'm going to sleep. What tool can I use for that situation, which might be long exhale breathing, might be a little mantra, a calming, soothing mantra, or a visualization of the moon over water, So depending on where our nervous system is at any given moment, there's going to be a different intervention for that. So for you, Jacqueline, when I was going to do this podcast, it's mid-afternoon. I usually get a little sleepy around 3 o'clock. So I actually ran around my house a little bit, got a little energy, kind of pumped myself up a little bit. I used movement and little light weights just to, maybe some Palabati breathing to turn my brain on at 3 o'clock in the afternoon and make sure that I was sharp and receptive and ready to meet with you. So I wouldn't say there's a tool that I used, except that if you become aware of your state, then you can figure out what to do if you're not feeling well and you want to get back to feeling better.
Yeah, so you really tapped in to your body and you're giving yourself almost that permission that, hey, you know what, today's not the day. Maybe I'm going to rest a little bit, or I need to prepare for this. So, maybe I'm going to use this. So it's all about becoming aware of your body and how it's feeling at that time. Yeah. Wow. Wouldn't that be amazing if we all tapped into that on a regular basis?
Well, I think one of your questions was about the mobile app that we've created called the Optimal State. And that's exactly what it is for, is it gives you a chance to stop for a moment, check in. Where am I? What am I feeling? And then you can either just be done and be like, okay, I checked in. Interesting. Or you can say, hey, I'd like a breathing technique that would help bring me to a better place. I'd like some movement. I'd like maybe some nutritional, do I need some warm liquids? Do I need a little caffeine? Things like that. So it has all these different categories of intervention that's matched up with how do we take you from this out of balance place to feeling better, and all based on yoga and Ayurveda. So
now that you brought it up, what brought into this idea of creating this Optimal State app that you've created? What's kind of the history of it, and where does it sit today?
Well, 7 years ago, I was teaching at Cal State University before I retired, and I was doing all of this in my yoga classes and my sports psychology classes that I taught. And I would be walking across campus and kids would literally see me 50 meters away and say, Dr. Wheeler, I'm in the red zone, which means you're just really fiery and agitated, or I'm in the blue zone. It means you're kind of depressed and down. So I'd be having these students yell at me from it. And I'd be like, you know what to do. You learned in class how to take care of yourself. But it occurred to me wow, this would be really cool on an app. So we went over to the engineering department on campus and we said, are there any students who want to make an app as a school project? And at the time it was to be used with the other students. So I figured it was, ideas from me, but the students were creating it for other students. So for several years, we had students working on that. Even after I retired, we still hired those same students as employees to continue to work on it. And then at some point, those students needed to move into their lives, and we actually hired a team from India. So the last 4 years, I think we've had a team from India, and we're just constantly kind of updating and creating more interventions. And we've really started to focus it on nervous system regulation because that seems to be what integrative medicine understands. So it's on the iPhone store, it's on the Android store. You can download it for free and try it out. And then if you decide you want to stay longer, you can pay like $5 a month or something. But it's just called the Optimal State.
And how does this work? Do I just check in?
Well,
It has questions
yeah,
hey, how are you
yeah.
feeling? And
I think we're not on video, are we? We're only
we're not
on.
on video. We're not on video.
Okay, well,
It's
I'll just
listening
show
in.
you. So once you download it, it just kind of shows up in your, uh, as one of your little icons, and then you can just kind of check in and say, "Oh, I'm feeling a little bit that," and then basically you can see what all the interventions for what you're feeling are, right? So some people like to just check in every once in a while, but you can set it to like every 4 or 6 hours, send you a ping to say, would you like to check in now? So you
Yeah.
can do it either way. Some people don't like to get reminded. They just want to do it when they do it. Um, what I've found about that is that a lot of people check in often when they're feeling good, but when they're feeling bad, they stop checking in. So
Right.
my recommendation is to just have a very soft sound, just, oh, that's like a bell of awareness. Do your little check-in. And then another cool thing is you can see your patterns over time. You can see how often you're in each of the zones. Does it happen more in the morning hours or the evening hours that you're feeling out of balance? So I like to have the little ping to remind
Mhm.
us to check in. I think that's an important part of building resilience and awareness.
Yeah, what a great idea. Do a lot of your students use it?
Think so. I mean, I'm a little shy about marketing. Like even now, I feel a little uncomfortable, and I think I need to get over that and just be like, listen, this is a tool that can help you. We've been working on it 7 years. We're not like making a bunch of money off it, so it's not like I'm, some money monger. I think I just really need to get more comfortable. Like I have uh, students in the master's degree program at Notre Dame of Maryland, where I'm the chair, who don't know about it yet. And I've been with them
Mhm.
2 semesters now. So, I need to get a little bit better about marketing it. And if you know anyone who wants to be a marketing partner, I could probably use that. I'm a professor. So.
100% I get it. But think about it this way. If you had medicine that would help so many others, would you not want to give it to people?
Yes, I just don't want to be the marketing person. That's
No,
it.
I
It's,
completely understand.
we all know our gifts. So
Mhm.
I do need to figure that piece of it out because it's a beautiful app. It really can help people.
Can I ask, is it because I'm not an Apple person, is it Android friendly as well?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
and yeah, we that's the other thing. You have to build two apps at the same time, so you're going down these two tracks. And that's where
So
we got stuck with the college students. They were having trouble doing both. And we had to hire the team from India because they could have some people or person working on the Android and others on the Apple and, that kind of thing.
that's why computer people do computer stuff,
That's right. That is
unlike me.
exactly. Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit about your own personal yoga practice as well? Because I find sometimes what happens with a lot of teachers, and particularly because this is your area as well, is it's almost you teach so much or you're so in it that you lose track of your own practice. So what types of things do you do for your own yoga practice?
Well, I'll be brutally honest and say that I think Western yoga is more like calisthenics or gymnastics. And as a woman goes through perimenopause and menopause, we tend to get a wonky SI joint.
Yeah.
The ligaments get overstretched, and there's so many darn forward bends in most of these yoga practices that we're doing. So I cannot go to a group class anymore. I just feel like it's not sequenced the way that I need it. I do very gentle asana at home without tons and tons and tons of forward bends. I do a ton of pranayama. I do a ton of meditation. And by a ton, I mean, in little blocks. I bet it's an hour and a half a day, meaning get up and breathe for 15 minutes and then meditate for another 20 minutes, then go about my day. Then maybe mid-afternoon, I'll do a 20-minute meditation period. I'll do more breath work and meditation in the evening. So I'm very attuned to myself, and I don't have a problem practicing, but I don't have children either. So I think for many, many people, they have so many responsibilities. If your kid needs a bath or needs to, get their homework done, you're going to have to go do that. Whereas if I can lock the cats out, I'm cool.
Yeah.
So I'm very blessed in that way. I mean, granted, having children is a blessing also, of course, but it hasn't been hard to maintain a practice for me.
Yeah. I mean, I do have kids, and I never really came into yoga until later in life. But my kids see me. Now, my kids are older, but they kind of see me as well. And my husband sees me. And it's, again, it goes back to she's got something that I want. So being able to integrate that with, hey, kids, let's go, I don't know, let's go for a walk and let's just feel our feet as we walk or something like that. So that you're able to give this beautiful gift to so many so that maybe we can have less suffering in the world. So I appreciate the fact that you're able to stay with that practice and honor your body as well with knowing, hey, you know what, I can't do this, or it's not good for me, or, giving yourself agency and autonomy to be able to advocate for yourself. So, yeah, I
I
love
just
that.
want to say I'm kind of in awe. Like you have a yoga studio and you teach asana classes. Like I don't think my body would agree with that anymore. So
Yeah.
there's so many questions I want to ask back to you. Like, how are you doing that?
We could talk about that after
All
the
right,
fact,
another
but I
time.
absolutely, it is integral in my life that I move and I breathe and yeah, it's made me a healthier person. Absolutely. I am much healthier now than I was 10, 15 years ago. Even if I was still running, yoga has changed my life in so, so many ways. And that's why I started this podcast, because I am grateful for those people who introduced it to me and also educated me that it wasn't just asana, that it is so much more. But again, this isn't about me. But I love talking to academics because I really do geek out. And you are the chair of the Department of Yoga Therapy and Ayurveda at Notre Dame of Maryland University. That's a big handle to say in there. And what I love is you actually teach future yoga therapists and future healthcare practitioners, which is a really unique program. Um, I'm really curious about how you got into the yoga therapy and how you are able to, facilitate that education to future healthcare practitioners through an integrative lens.
All right, well, let's go all the way back. I was just finishing my PhD. I had been taking exercise yoga classes here in the state, obviously very athletic, and I love the flow yoga and the really hard Iyengar classes. But when I went to India, somehow the universe placed me at what's called, it's basically a yoga medical clinic. So I thought I was going to do more asana, but it's called the Krishnamacharya Yoga Mandiram, and it's basically a medical clinic. And I didn't even know that's what I was going to. So that's kind of how I got into the yoga therapy when I sat there and watched real people seeing real results like in front of my eyes. I couldn't believe it. One man came in and he was just tremoring and shaking, and they did very specific things with him. And by the end of the practice, his hands were not tremoring. And now, granted, he'd go home and that would happen again, but at least he knew how he could get 15 minutes with no tremors to write out his bills, So just to say, like, I saw this kind of medical yoga, if you will. And then I went back summer after summer. Being a professor, you get to have summers off usually. So I'd go back for 3, 4, 6 weeks, multiple summers, and watch these cases in real time. And that really lit my fire for wanting to do it here in the US. I approached 3, maybe 4 universities to try to get them to start a yoga therapy program. And we'd always get to they'd be excited. This sounds amazing. And then we get to a certain level in the university and it would just be like, nope, not doing that. No new programs, no money, whatever. And so I gave up. I was like, you know what? I guess in this lifetime, you don't get everything you want. And I gave up in February of 2025. I just said, I'm out. I'm retired from my university job. Yoga therapy this isn't happening. And then on October 6th of 2025, I saw a job description to be the chair of the Department of Yoga Therapy at Notre Dame. I was like, what? I gave up. I'm looking up at the universe right now. And then by December 6th, I had that job. And that was about a year and 3 months ago. And it's the only master's degree in the United States that's at an accredited university. That we have a master's degree program in yoga therapy, but then we also have what's called a post-master's program, which is basically where licensed healthcare practitioners that have a master's or equivalent in some other area can come and do yoga studies, yoga therapy studies, basically, or what we call therapeutic yoga. So I think sometimes we have to let the universe place us and just go with the flow and trust, because I did not expect to end up at the School of Integrative Health. Mm-hmm. I had given up, honestly.
I'm in Canada, and when I talk about yoga therapy, nobody knows what it is. They think that it's teaching yoga classes, which they're like, you're a yoga teacher? Yes, but there's more to it than that. Can you I'm going to ask the impossible here. What is yoga therapy?
Well, the way that I see it is we've got this great big world of yoga. And within that circle, if you just imagine a circle, there's many other little circles. There's yoga for social justice. There's yoga for your mind. There's yoga for, laughing yoga. So picture all these little circles inside the big one. We are a niche called yoga therapy, and it basically is helping people with their physical problems, their energetic problems, mental, emotional, suffering, maybe spiritual, if they're up for that. And it's based on health and healing. And sometimes we do it for individuals, one-on-one. Other times we do it for like a group of 6 to 8 people. So maybe 6 or 8 people that have a cancer diagnosis or have metabolic disorder, or maybe they have, Parkinson's, So this is where I think yoga therapy belongs, over not on the medical side of healthcare. I think it belongs in the health education side. Just like we have a diabetes educator, we could have, a yoga therapist on the health education, prevention, and what do they call it? Lifestyle, I don't know if Canada has that part of their medical system. Do they have like nutritionists and diabetes educators and all of that on that side?
Yeah. So if I need, a consult with a dietitian, then I'd go to a registered dietitian or to a diabetes specialist as well.
Yeah. So that's where I think, because we are preventative, I mean, not that we can't help once there is a diagnosis, but I just feel like even with the need to have a license, like if we wanted a license, it's going to be a little while, and that's on the medical side, but we could do it on the health ed side and health promotion side without getting a license just yet.
Yeah, my heart is really moving into integrative medicine. And I've been kind of tasked this year to create such a program. Full disclosure, that's, that's what my sabbatical's about. But where do you see integrative medicine kind of being in the healthcare field?
Well, I mean, it's sad to say, but right now, because most of healthcare is driven by cost and by insurance payouts and basically trying to get people to work harder and harder and harder with 5 minutes per patient, 7 minutes per patient. I don't see how we fit into that model very well as integrative health practitioners. And so a lot of people are choosing to pay out of pocket because that's what they want. You could call it boutique services. I don't love that because I think as a social justice advocate, we need to have everyone have access. But I really don't know how we're going to convince insurance companies to pay for this. I don't know. I mean, I hate to be dismal about it, but we have to be realistic too.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, in Canada, our medicine is socialized, but it's the same thing. It's very cost effective, right? So the physicians are paid on a per patient basis, so they have to make money. But for the government to be able to pay for integrative medicine, like yoga therapy or, name it, it's a cost I'm not sure we're willing to pay, which is kind of disappointing because I read the research on the importance of it. And people will do it anyways, right? People will go to a yoga class thinking that I am going to be helped when it's a yoga teacher who's teaching asanas and not necessarily the other stuff with it. So I wish you all the best in this program because truly the research I read on it, there's a lot of really good research on how integrative complementary approaches can be really helpful when prescribed by people who know what they're doing, not Dr. Google. So I'm excited about your program. But just again, to go back to you, you have a book coming out in 2026, Applications of Therapeutic Yoga and Integrative Health. Why did you decide to co-author this book, and how can listeners get information or use this information in their book?
The reason I decided to co-author is because writing a book is really, really hard. And if you've never done it before, I don't recommend doing it alone. I think any of us who can find a seasoned author that has done it once or twice, they are the guide. So Marlisa Sullivan is my co-author, and she has written a book called Understanding Yoga Therapy, very popular book in our field. And she and I are good friends. So I said, why don't we write a book together? And she generously agreed to help me get the message out. So that's why I decided to co-author. And then what was the second part of the question? I can't remember.
So if our listeners are really interested, do you think that is this geared toward yoga therapists? Is this geared toward people who may not have a background in healthcare? Like, who's it really written for?
We thought about healthcare providers like physical therapists, occupational therapists, athletic trainers, all psychologists, social workers, and yoga therapists. The depth of it will teach even someone who's already a certified yoga therapist. It will teach them things. We went very, very deeply into the teachings, but we tried to show the research and the interface with healthcare, which also benefits yoga teachers and yoga therapists so they can see how to do that. But the audience is healthcare providers, strangely.
Yeah.
Because we want them to know.
Yeah. And I love that because again, when I talk to my colleagues, they don't necessarily understand. I mean, I have a few I call weirdos in my little group who understand kind of the weirdness of our healthcare that we do. But even to understand from a layperson, why are we just breathing initially? Like, why am I just laying on your table and beginning breathing? Don't you want me to do 3 sets of 10 squats? I'm like, no, let's start with, you probably just ran in from your car, you dropped your kids off, you're probably, and kind of an ultra say, let's just downregulate a little bit. So I love the fact that you've written a book and really going deeper into, yoga, and I'm assuming the philosophies and all the myriad of things that yoga can help with. Amy, many people listening may be navigating an illness and uncertainty or major life change. What wisdom would you share based upon your own experience, and that as a yoga therapist as well?
I would say first acknowledge what you're feeling and try to tune into what you're feeling without minimizing it or pushing it away or spiritually bypassing it. Like really feel like, oh my gosh, this is happening. And then I would say allow yourself, if you have people around you that love you and care for you, allow them to do the work for you. Lay in bed, let them cook for you, and don't feel guilty about it. You've done it for them. It's okay. So allow yourself to become nourished, because the main cause of why we get these illnesses is depletion and inflammation and stress. And allow yourself to fill your cup up again so that either it doesn't come back, it doesn't stay. And then I guess the third part would be healing doesn't happen in isolation, meaning your relationships matter. And that could mean that you have a very stressful person in your life that you need to create some space from so that you can heal, because they're too agitating and it's not going to work for you to heal in their presence. So it could go both ways. Pull the people that make you have a sense of well-being towards you and create a little space from the people who are maybe not so pleasant.
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate that. And I've recently come across the difference between the words help and serve. And, when someone's not feeling well, I'll often say, how can I help you? But, in the conversation was that actually creates an imbalance where people are indebted to me. So people are afraid to say, can I have help? So I'm actually going to switch that. I'm going to say, how can I serve you? And then that way it's almost, you're getting benefit, but I'm getting benefit as well. And so that's kind of my mindset of, people who are dealing with chronic illness and maybe looking at if I ever struggle, how can you serve me? Would be a better way of looking at it versus helping. So I appreciate, you saying honor yourself and your needs as well. And don't be afraid to ask for assistance when needed. But to finish off the last question, what does your inner practice look like now in this season of your life?
I think about this a lot. I'm very introverted and I have a very rich inner life. And what I've been thinking about lately is that humans are flawed. I'm flawed. You are flawed. We are all flawed. We're trying to do our best. We're pretty horrible at it. We're sucking most days. And I've decided that if someone has a good heart, if they are a good person, I'm going to let them get away with a whole lot. And I'm going to have a really wide tolerance in my relationship with them. But if someone is kind of evil and nasty and not willing to reciprocate, I'm gonna shorten that. I'm gonna, have a little less contact and a little less tolerance and maybe even remove myself. And I'm just giving myself permission to acknowledge that, because it's hard on both ends. It's hard. The people we love that are really good-hearted people, like we get annoyed by them, right? So, but I want to be more kind and more gentle and tolerant of that because I'm in it with them.
Yeah.
Versus I usually do the opposite. I give the jerks all my space and time and energy.
Right.
And no, let's shut that down. Goodbye. Go find somebody else to torture. Not me today.
Right.
So I'm really, my inner work right now is being more compassionate to some and more distant to others.
That's really wise now that I think about it, because sometimes we give our energy to those people that bother us the most.
Yep, I do.
And why are we not giving energy to people that we love versus ruminating over those, negative conversations or whatever? Thank you. I appreciate that. That's very wise. Thank you.
Well, that's just my latest, if you said, what you said in the season you're in. Yeah, well, the last couple of months, that's what I've been contemplating.
Yeah, thank you. Amy, is there anything else that you want to share with us before we sign off?
I think we have covered an amazing amount of ground, and I just want to thank you for the work you're doing in the world. And I just feel so grateful. We had said at the very beginning before we got on that being called weird is not a bad thing. And I can tell you that I've never fit into a box. I've never when I was in a department of kinesiology, I was the weird yoga girl going to India. My boss made some comment about my sandals and my long skirt or something. Like I was always the oddball. And now I'm in integrative health, and maybe I'm the kinesiology person. Like I've never fit. There's no box for me, and I kind of see you that way as the little bit I know you, that maybe you aren't the exact fit into any box either. So just meeting another person that hasn't maybe fit in the box exactly the way most people do is really inspiring to me.
Thank you. I appreciate that because I don't fit into a box. So I truly appreciate you seeing that through me. Amy, it has been delightful having a conversation with you. I'm truly glad that I was able to sit down and have this time with you. And it's not so daunting after listening to you for a few years. So please, listener, if you get an opportunity, listen to Amy's podcast, and why is it suddenly escaping my mind right now? The Yoga Therapy Hour with Amy Wheeler, Dr. Amy Wheeler, and check out her app as well, the Optimal State of Living, which will be in the show notes too. So thank you as always. It's been truly an honor.
Thank you so much.
Many thanks to Dr. Amy Wheeler for joining us today. Stories like Amy's remind us that healing is not just something we study or teach. It is something we live. Through diagnosis, uncertainty, and the moments when life asks us to slow down and listen more closely. Amy, thank you so much for sharing your story and the work you're doing to bring more humanity and regulation into healthcare. And thank you, listeners, for tuning into the Inner Practice. If this episode resonated with you, please like, share, or follow the podcast so others can discover these conversations. And many thanks to those who support the show. It is your generosity that helps me keep this podcast on air. And if you enjoyed this episode and would like to support the podcast, you can always buy me a coffee with the link in the show notes. And if you would like to be a guest on the show, send me an email with a short bio and a little bit about your story. Until next time, take a breath, slow down, and keep returning to your inner practice.